All right, so the scouting combine is in the books, free agency is on the way, and the draft, aka Fernando Mendoza Day for Raider Nation, can't come soon enough. Now, the NFL never sleeps, and neither does Sin City Beat. Today, we're breaking everything down. Let's go. Sin City Beat starts right now.
From Las Vegas, this is Sin City Beat.
Hello and welcome. Thanks so much for joining us here on Sin City Beat. I'm your host, Mike Davis. Sin City Beat is the show that dissects the Vegas sports world through the eyes of the sports reporters and storytellers leading the charge. Joining the action today, we have Q Myers of ESPN Las Vegas and host of Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio. Ray Brewer, managing editor of the Las Vegas Sun, and Levi Edwards, digital reporter with the Las Vegas Raiders. So it's great to have you all here with us. So Levi and Q, you both were at the Combine in Indy, and let's talk about it. Specifically, Fernando Mendoza, the projected top pick for the Raiders. Mendoza didn't throw or participate in any on-field drills, but we did get some measurables back on him, and good news, they're almost identical to Bills superstar Josh Allen. Mendoza is almost 6'5" and 236 pounds with a hand size of 9.5 inches. Now, he did have interviews with the Raiders, and reporters are saying it went well. So, Q, let me start with you. What did you hear about the Raiders and their interview and their time with Mendoza?
Well, we heard from him when he stepped to the podium on Friday, and he said it went really well, and he said that they're very football-centric guys. So he said that they sat him down, they taught him a play, they taught him his projections, where to go when you're in trouble, and you could tell that that was something that lit him up. And that, for anyone that's trying to get to know head coach Clint Kubiak, that's what he's all about. He's all about football. He's not a guy that wants small talk. He doesn't want to talk about Johnny's soccer game. He wants to talk about football. Yeah. So I could tell that they probably sat down and had some really good conversations about this is what we want to do, this is how we're going to do it, and this is what we're going to need from you. So he was projecting that it went really well. Now, obviously, we don't know exactly how the meetings went, but Fernando was very confident that the meetings went great. Now,
Levi, you were there as well. Big news that came out on social media, I think it was with that reporter Aditi. He mentioned that even some teams, one team in particular, said, hey, maybe you could get arrested so you could slide in the draft and we can draft you. I mean, he's coming off even more gregarious and likable than I even anticipated. What was your take on all that?
Well, my take is he's just being authentic. He's being true to himself, and there's a lot of people, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, where people might not like him because he's a cornball, but as long as you're authentic about it, I mean, he's a guy that he's going to be very upfront about who he is, and he mentioned he was a type A guy.
Yeah.
And, I really like that he mentioned that in his interviews because it seems like Clint Kubiak is the same kind of way. So That seems like a really good pairing, especially with the fact that you have 3 former quarterback coaches on that staff. It really did seem like he handled himself very professional, very well in the interview with us. It seemed like he did the same thing with the formal interview with the Raiders. So it seems like it could be a very good fit.
Now we're going to get to see him throw a little bit at his pro day. He's going to help out his teammates get some shine, Ray. But what your take on him just not actively participating? He got some stretching in. He got his measurables done. Were you turned off at all from his lack of participation?
No. Why would you want to participate? He's already got the first pick locked up. The worst thing that could happen is he throws a bad pass and all of a sudden the internet goes crazy and he's now the Marcus Russell.
There's only stuff to lose from that.
Right, exactly right. And I mean, you already have people saying, well, Ty Simpson was better through 8 games, right? Which Dan Orlovsky from ESPN said that. Which, first of all, 8 games is not the complete season. And second of all, right, exactly. And second of all, I mean, he has nowhere to go but down, right? He's already number 1. He's already the Heisman Trophy winner. He's a national champion. The tape is out there, right? If you want to know who Fernando Mendoza is, turn on the film. Don't worry about what he's doing with no pass rush. Don't worry what he's doing when he's throwing to a wide receiver that doesn't have anybody covering him. Like, he's good.
Yeah, I like all the film on him, and I just like everything about him on and off the field, even if there is some elements of cornball. Let me ask you this, Levi. I mean, I'm so curious to just know, talk and chatter at Indy. I wish I was there with you guys taking in St. Elmo's Steakhouse and all that stuff. Was there any chatter at all that the Raiders could not take this obvious answer at the number 1 pick and go with Mendoza? Was there any chatter at all about entertaining trades and that this might not be a done deal?
I think there was a lot of hypothetical situation about it, but I think it was not necessarily, the big question was not if the Raiders are going to trade back and take someone else. The big question was, what will the Raiders do once they have Fernando Mendoza? Because we've seen this story before where you get a young quarterback, you don't develop them properly, and they get thrown into a bad situation, and then they turn into what we just saw in the Super Bowl with Sam Darnold having his redemption story. And I think most people are more concerned about, like, yes, he's the number one pick. He's the guy. But what will the Raiders do to make sure that they don't fail Fernando Mendoza? I think that's the big number one question that was asked to me a lot in Indy at the Combine, of people just being like, what's the plan? I know you're going to take a number one, but what are you going to do from there?
Yeah.
And I'm really curious to see, because Spytek even mentioned he wants to, maybe bring in someone or have someone on the roster that might be able to let Fernando sit for a little bit, or whoever they pick to sit for a little bit. He kind of alluded to that a little bit, so I'm really curious to see what they do about that.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that.
So basically,
as well.
no. Basically, no is the answer. No, there's no question about.
No.
There's
Okay,
no.
that's
maybe
good.
The
That
Raiders don't get
settles
him.
me, and I'm just hoping Gino's also out as well. Do you think Gino will be on the roster?
I pray he's not on the roster.
Again, no.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Q
Let
is
me
quick.
go ahead and put it out there. No.
We've
All right,
already
there you
been
go.
to that.
When Q says no, you just move on. And now I'm going to go to the break. Coming up, we got more Mendoza talk. Where does the Heisman Trophy winner rank among quarterback prospects since 2020? That's when Sin City Beat returns.
You're watching Sin City Beat.
Since 2020, we've seen some pretty legit quarterback prospects. In the 2020 NFL draft class, we had Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Tua, Jordan Love, and even my dude, Jalen Hurts. Now in 21, 5 quarterbacks were taken in the first round: Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones. 22, just Kenny Pickett in the first. Then in 23, we saw Bryce Young go 1, CJ Stroud go 2, and Anthony Richardson go 4. 24, that's a big one: Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix, and Bo Nix. And last year, Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, and Shador Sanders. So that all leads us to Fernando Mendoza. Levi, where would you rank Fernando amongst all those quarterbacks I just listed? Where is he in that scope?
Good luck, dude.
Let me carefully choose my words. So I would say definitely, let's go back to that legendary 24 draft class.
Yeah.
When you have Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, Drake May. I think he's still a first-round pick in that draft class. I don't think he's a number 1 pick in that draft class, but I still think that he's probably right there around 13 for the Raiders to take, I would say, in that draft. And I really do think that he did enough at Cal to where he definitely was a promising prospect, and I think what he did at Indiana was just kind of like the icing on the cake. So I think a lot of people say that, he's only going to be the number 1 pick because it's a weak draft class and there's only 1 quarterback in. And I just watched the tape. And something I just want to mention real quick is you talked about Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, his junior year at LSU versus his senior year at LSU, completely different player.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Like tremendous, just crazy development trait that we saw. And I would say that Fernando kind of had the same thing.
Right.
He kind of had the same thing going from Cal to Indiana when he transferred, and he was just a completely different player, and he developed so much. So I would like to say that it's not crazy to think that the same thing with Fernando couldn't be, compared to Joe Burrow, in the sense that you're getting a really good polished player that's going to come into the league and be of that caliber.
I feel like there's so many shades of Joe Burrow there, especially just winning it all, winning the Heisman. To me, there are a lot of shades of Joe Burrow, especially just as a leader on and off the field, can't miss kind of guy. In your estimation, when you see that whole list of quarterbacks, let's just say they all were available at the top overall pick, I think Burrow would probably go 1, but is Mendoza 2?
He's not 2. I mean, when you look at the 24 class with, Jaden Daniels was also a Heisman Trophy winner at LSU. Didn't win the national championship, but he had to go through the SEC, right? And Drake May, everybody loved his athleticism.
Caleb Williams.
Caleb Williams was number
Highly
1
touted.
for 2 years. I will say the one thing that Mendoza has that some of these other quarterbacks don't is his ceiling, I think, is a lot higher. He's not even close to being a finished product yet. And that's why you saw the Raiders bring in Kubiak, an offensive-minded guy who's had success, who's developed quarterbacks, and they're trying to surround him with people that can maximize that potential. And you saw it blossom a little bit from Cal to Indiana, and even from spring in Indiana to fall in Indiana, and fall in Indiana to when he ran that touchdown in against Miami.
Right.
And, the sky's the limit. The kid's smart. For all intents and purposes, it looks like he's a grinder. And it's up to the Raiders to see if they could develop this kid. And then in 4 years, when some other TV station and some other market does that and Fernando Mendoza's on the list, maybe he's behind Joe Burrow or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like he has that will and that want to be great. I'm just so curious, Q, in your estimation, when you're looking at that list, would you be in a standstill if you had to choose between him and Trevor Lawrence coming out of Clemson? Or is Fernando somebody that just has more franchise quarterback can't miss qualities?
No, I think that it's a fine line. I mean, I think he would have been probably middle of the pack with all those. I mean, that was a lot of quarterbacks that you talked about, right? But there's a handful of those guys that he's definitely much better than, right? I mean, you could look at like the Zach Wilsons. I can look at Tua. I can look at, I'll say Justin Herbert. What has Justin Herbert done? I know he's built in a lab, and everyone says he's the guy that I would go create if I wanted a quarterback, but what has he done?
Shout out If-Man.
He hasn't won anything, so I would say that I'd put him up there with Justin Herbert. Look, in the 2024 draft, which is what everyone goes back to, I think he'd be the fourth quarterback taken. It'd be Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and Fernando Mendoza.
So he's really ahead of Bo Nix, Michael Penix, and J.J. McCarthy.
For sure.
So
ahead of those
that's really
guys.
where it is.
Right.
Now,
and that's not a bad thing, right? Because Bo Nix has been to the playoffs two times in 2 years.
Right.
So that's fine. If you get him fourth, that's still a really good spot, and he could still win with him.
Right. Now,
But Bo Nix works in Denver's system.
Right.
To Denver's credit, they found a guy that fit
for
the
sure.
Sean Payton
Which is
system.
what Mendoza is supposed to do with Kubiak.
And I think that's the best way to kind of take this conversation and push the conversation forward, I think, is like, okay, we know where he kind of stacks maybe against these other prospects. How do the Raiders, now knowing, hey, it's draft day's Fernando Mendoza celebration day.
Right.
We get this guy falling in our lap. How do we set him up for success? What's your take on that?
It's real simple. I mean, just like Bo Nix works with Sean Payton, you do what he does well, right? If you're the Raiders, you say, okay, what does this guy do? What is his best qualities? How do I set him up for success? You've got to have a play caller, you've got to have protection, and you've got to have playmakers. They've got the play caller in Kubiak. They better get some protection. Right, that offensive line has to be straight, and they've already got a couple playmakers, and I'm assuming they're going to bring in some more. That's how you do it. Also, you don't rush them on the field. The Raiders aren't a Super Bowl team next year, right? They're not a team that I think is going to all of a sudden be the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Patriots. I don't think they're going to be that team.
Right.
So you take your time, you put him on the field when you feel comfortable that he knows the system and he's got the proper P's around him. The play caller, the protection, and the playmakers.
All right, and let's talk about one of those P's coming up in a little bit. It's basically protection. We're talking Raiders, free agency targets, what they got to do to get that P settled. Welcome back to Sin City Beat. NFL free agency officially begins on Wednesday, March 11th. What do the Raiders need to prioritize? Ray, if you were GM John Spytek, what would you do first once we enter free agency?
Well, it's a fun problem to have because of all the money the Raiders, I think, $90 million.
Second highest cap.
In cap space. And I'm just I know that the need is on the offensive line, and I get it. You want to protect your franchise quarterback and make things easier for your franchise running back. But for me, I just want to get a receiver that Mendoza could throw the ball to, because you've got Bauer. You need somebody that could stretch the field. And, you know, what great skilled player could you come in to bring to the mix? To me, that is just tantalizing. And
who would that be, though?
I don't know. I don't know. And maybe I live in like a fantasy football world where I want to. And I'm speaking on the general fan, not somebody that knows the team as intimately as you guys. And I just want to see that the receivers are, to me, such a sore eye. So would be Mendoza breaking his leg because they don't have a guard.
For me, and my take on this is like, listen, Alec Pierce is a guy who's a free agent. I just don't know if that makes that big of a difference. Now, if we're talking a Maxx Crosby trade where maybe A.J. Brown is involved or somebody of that caliber, that's different. But to me, I would say you got to go spend money maybe on the Tyler Linderbaum more so than the Alec Pierce. And that's where I would dump a lot of money. I mean, if he's going to get $25 million a year, to me, that's better used money than spending $20 on Alec Pierce.
That's the thing. He's still young. It's not like he's a 30-year-old offensive lineman. This guy's still young, so you back up the Brinks truck. You allow him to get that, and then all of a sudden you start to solidify your offensive line. So now your wide receivers that you have, your running backs that you have, your tight ends that you have, your quarterback that you're incoming, now all of a sudden they're all much better because now your offensive line is that much better. And the Raiders feel pretty good about some of their players in the building right now for that O-line. Now, I think that they need a lot of work. I think that they need to prove it. They're going into a new blocking scheme as well that's never really worked for the Raiders. So there's a lot of questions out there. You've got to get guys that fit the scheme. The zone blocking scheme is not something that's easy to to come away with. Like, you're not just out there doing it right away. I mean, that's something repetition.
That's something that comes from the Shanahan tree.
And the
it gets that,
tree,
you know, Kubiak, Shanahan, that running
this
the ball.
guy can run for 1,000 yards if they do it right.
I mean, it's a big deal. Now, the linchpin in that zone blocking scheme really could be the center in this Tyler Linderbaum from the Ravens, a kid from Boston College. Do you think they could really back up the Brinks truck like Q's saying, Levi? And I mean, if he's commanding 20 to 25 million a year, solidifying that center position, how key would that be for that scheme?
It would be massive. And the two names that you just mentioned, those are the two guys the Raiders have to go after. Alec Pierce, Tyler Linderbaum, those are two guys that I feel like would fit perfectly within Clint Kubiak's system in the sense of like trying to be a zone blocking team and really trying to get up to the second level as quick as you can. Really athletic, young guy. Alec Pierce is a guy who's, you know, really good route running and has a little bit of sneaky speed to him, a guy that Fernando I think could be really well with. The only problem with those two things is they're on two teams that are also going to try to pull out the same Brinks truck for both of them. And I honestly right now have a really hard time believing that either one of those teams are going to be able to leave their retrospective location right now. I think the Colts are going to pull out a franchise tag for Alec Pierce, and God knows how much money the Ravens are going to have to pull out for Tyler Linderbaum, especially considering the fact that he's already with an elite quarterback and an elite running back. Obviously, a new coaching scheme, and that might play a factor into things. So, but I think Tyler Linderbaum would be great, and then we can get over this whole thing with JPJ playing center. The whole fan base can just drop that. That's over. We can have him at guard. We can figure out another free agent that we can sign at guard or even develop a young guy. And then you have two tackles that I feel like the coaching staff and the front office is really comfortable with in Colton Miller and DJ Glaze. And then we can really go about protecting Fernando or whoever the quarterback may be, protecting Ashton Genty, making sure all of his yards aren't, you know, yards after contact every time he hits the line of scrimmage and get after it.
One of the good things about, you know, potential Crosby trade talk is there is a lot of depth at tackle in this draft, especially towards the end of the first round. So getting and nabbing another guy there could possibly happen.
And I think Glaze actually kicks inside. I don't think he's going to be the right tackle this year. That's just my gut feeling. I think he's going to kick inside the guard. I think that you've seen his weaknesses, which is speed. And, I don't think that that's a really good position for him. And he's actually a guy that's very versatile. He could play multiple roles. I just think that him going inside the guard would make more sense. And then you have options with Caleb Rogers. You have options with Charles Grant. You bring in Linderbaum. Like Levi says, you shut the conversation down on JPJ at center. And then the best guys go out there and win. And those are the starters.
All right, we'll see what happens. The Crosby trade talk is just not stopping, though. Coming up, what the panel is hearing and whether those rumors will come true. Earlier this morning, Sports Illustrated NFL reporter Albert Breer shared that the Raiders could trade Maxx Crosby as early as this week. Now, he mentioned that several teams were checking in on his availability, including the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Patriots. So, Q, what are you hearing on this?
Well, it was a big subject at the Combine, as you can imagine. I mean, as much as we were talking about draft prospects, we were all talking about Maxx Crosby. And, we heard from John Spytek that they plan on him being a Raider next year, which to me, my interpretation was they haven't got an offer that they really like yet. It just feels like at this stage of the game, I've been adamant that he's going to be a Raider in 2026, but man, it just feels so much at this stage of the game. There's so much smoke that there's got to be some fire. Right now, they're starting to put, I think Tom Pelissero from the NFL Network put the 7 to 10 days out last week. Now you're hearing Albert Breer put out sometime this week before the new league year starts. So now they're starting to put a timeline to this. So it's feeling more and more similar to the Khalil Mack situation, which I hate. Because, man, that made me sick when that happened. But it just kind of feels like we're trending more to the Raiders trading him than them not trading him.
Yeah, it just makes sense. Ray, the Khalil Mack, the Micah Parsons trade, they got a big bounty for those trades. Let's just say the bounty isn't as high because he's coming off 2 years back-to-back where there was surgeries needed. He's, turning 29 in August. Would you still pull the trigger? Does it just make sense for all parties?
Well, like you said, there is smoke because we've been hearing it for weeks and weeks and weeks. So clearly the Raiders are trying to get more value. They're not getting Micah Parsons.
They're not going to just give him away. That's for sure. They ain't going to the dollar store, man. They ain't, you know what I mean? They ain't going to aisle 5 at the dollar store and be like, all right, here you go. Here's Maxx Crosby. That ain't happening.
But they're going to be judged by the return they get, especially if he has a great season wherever he winds up. So it's kind of a no-win situation for the Raiders because obviously Crosby's very popular with the fan base, but they haven't been great with him, and he could go somewhere else and be awesome.
Levi, what ultimately winds up happening?
Well, it could really go either way. What I will say, with my eyes that I have in the building, nothing has really changed with Maxx Crosby, despite all the rumors and all this stuff going on. He's still in the building every day. I still see him every day. He's making sure he's going through rehab, making sure he's getting healthy every day. So that hasn't changed. He's still been the same guy through the process. However, even John Spytek said at the Combine, we're going to listen. And I think when it comes down to it, definitely comes down to the return. I don't think that they're going to move Maxx Crosby for a bag of chips. This is not one of those things where they just want to get rid of him and move on. They need something in return that will be able to be substantial for him. And especially in the next 2 draft classes this year and next, you have a lot of really good edge rushers that are going to come out that I think can be really good replacements, especially in the 3-4 system that we're going to see with Rob Leonard. You got to get something in return from Maxx. You can't just let him go for anything. Yeah,
I 100% agree. Q, I'll give you the last word on this. Does the Jim Leonard, we have about a minute left, does that have anything to do with him staying?
Oh, Robbie Leonard?
Promoting Rob Leonard from D-line coach to DC.
I don't think so. I think Robbie Leonard earned it. He's been a guy that's been well-respected around the league, and I know multiple teams have tried to interview him, and the Raiders have blocked him. So after Kubiak talked to him, and after some suggestions from Spytek, like, hey, you might want to check that guy out. He's pretty sharp. I think that they really like Robbie Leonard. I think there's a good chance he's going to be a really good defensive coordinator.
Another thing on top of that is Rob Leonard has a really good connection with Mike McDonald, who's the Seahawks coach. They were together with the Ravens. So Clint had already known about Rob Leonard for a while. So just with having that relationship through Mike McDonald, I think it was good enough for him to be like, okay, well, if my guy vouches for him, then I want him to be my DC.
All right. Well, listen, I vouch for this entire panel. Levi, Q, Ray, I'm Mike. We want to thank editor Jess, producer James, Daphne, our whole production team. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to keep our eyes tuned to everything happening with Crosby. See you next time here on City Beat.